You know, one of the reasons I started this show was to sort of excise the demons of my past. Games like Battletoads and Silver Surfer, they really, well, they didn't haunt my dreams or keep me up at night. I certainly don't hear voices in my head telling me to kill everyone because I couldn't beat Battletoads as a young child. No, nothing like that. Especially when I was getting taunted in school and people were saying, "Oh, you can't beat Battletoads, but I beat Battletoads." Well, you know what? I beat Battletoads, so fuck you. It's nothing like that. But I really do feel like these games should be they deserve to be beaten. Now, while I do have a standing rule against having shoot-em-ups on Until We Win, there is one game from my childhood that I really, really wanted to beat. One game that has caused me more grief than any other game ever. In fact, this one game caused me more grief than Battletoads and Silver Surfer combined. Today we're going to play the Guardian Legend, Until We Win. The Guardian Legend is an interesting game. It's a hybrid action-adventure shoot-'em-up, something you don't really see a lot of, sadly, and it's actually got an interesting history, too. This game was developed by Compile, the same company that brought us Puyo Puyo and Zanuck. Yeah, they made good games, and TGL is one of them. It was released in Japan by Ireme, of all companies. You know, the same company that HVGN creams himself over. And released in America by Broderbund, the same company that made Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, Prince of Persia, Lode Runner, and they're the same company that stole the floppies to Leisure Suit Larry 4. Needless to say, TGL has quite a pedigree for its time. But it never got a sequel, and it's hardly ever mentioned. Why? Well, the game didn't sell all that well. In fact, TGL is actually considered to be one of the bigger flops that Compile had, and that's a shame because this game is not only hard, it's pretty damn awesome too. The whole idea is that you play as the Defender of Earth, a female aerobot transformer who has to save the world from... I don't know. We're talking about female aerobot transformers, and it's just... Honestly, one of the biggest downsides to this game is the story. I really don't know anything about the plot of TGL. I do know that the thing you've got to infiltrate is called Naju, and you've got to stop Naju from crashing into Earth. There's a small semblance of a story here in the form of text boxes left by a predecessor of some sort. Honestly, it doesn't matter because this game really only features two things: fish and eyeballs. Oh yes, TGL is secretly called Eyeballs the Video Game. Now, while this game is extremely difficult, it's not impossible, and there are some things you can do to stay alive. First and foremost, don't die. Second of all, keep in mind that there's a password system in the game. Hell, it was even advertised on the North American box. Unlike every other shoot-'em-up in the world, this one let you continue from a previous point in the game. Next, collect as many chips as you can and make damn sure you collect everything in the game. You may be able to skirt by the early game with minimal power, but the later stages can be downright impossible without being at full power. Finally, much like every other shoot-'em-up in existence, this game relies on patterns. Once you know the pattern of each stage and boss, the game becomes easier, but only slightly. So, being a hybrid action-adventure shoot-'em-up game, this isn't your typical UW-dub. The overworld levels are relatively easy to get through so long as you pay attention to how much health you have and how many chips you have. This game, though, is incredibly long. How long? Well, we're talking 10 stages, each with 2 shooting stages, so counting the overworld, that's roughly 30 levels we have to talk about. I don't know about you, but I just don't have the time to dissect everything here. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna skip the action-adventure part of the game. I know, it's what makes the game unique, but it is really easy. And if you explore every section of the overworld, you'll be powerful enough to breeze through these portions. So instead of giving you a level-by-level guide, and because I'm hungry and fat and really want to eat dinner soon instead of recording this, we're gonna talk about the power-ups and the bosses. First, the chips. These are the special MacGuffins that allow you to fire your special weapons in the game. Also, the more chips you have, the more powerful your main weapons become. Blue chips are blue orbs you find in the game. They restore 3/4 of 1 bar of health. They also give you 20 chips, so, in other words, they're useless. Red chips restore your health by 2 bars and give you 200 chips. You got all that? Good. Chips power your main weapon, but are used when you use a secondary weapon. There are also these things called landers. I had no idea what these things were until I looked it up in an FAQ. Every so often you run into a blue Lolo looking thing. That's called a lander. These landers will either give you a password to record your progress, or he tries to sell you something. There are smaller blue and red landers which you can pick up. The blue lander raises your maximum health by 1. May not be impressive, but it helps. The red lander raises your maximum chip count. Basically, you don't really level in this game so much as you find these landers and increase your stats. There are other items you want to keep an eye out for, too. The heart will refill your health by 5 points, the energy tank completely refills your health, the gun raises your attack power, the shield raises your defense power, the thing that looks like a bunch of arrows boosts your firing speed, and as far as items go, that's about it. Now, we need to talk about the special weapons. Like any good shoot-'em-up, this game has a plethora of secondary weapons for you to use and exploit. While your main weapon never changes, aside from firing speed and power, you can freely select your secondary weapon as long as you've unlocked it. Each weapon is 3 levels. When you first unlock the weapon, it's at level 1, of course, and every time you get a weapon upgrade, you'll level it up to a maximum of 3. As the weapon level increases, so does its attack power, speed, and cost in chips. But the cost is generally worth it unless you overlevel your weapon too early and can't afford it. The bubble shot fires a bubble in the direction you're facing, and at level 3 it fires a huge fast bubble. It's kind of like a fart bubble underwater. The wave gun fires an energy around you. At level 3 it fires the fastest, strongest waves, kind of like a fat man doing a cannonball in a pool. The shield creates a ball of energy that floats in a circle around you. Level 3 it's much larger and moves in a very fast circle. The grenade fires a grenade in the direction you're facing. It's hard to get used to the controls, but it does a large amount of damage, even at level 1. At level 3, the blast radius increases significantly, making hitting enemies much easier. The fireball is often considered by FAQ writers to be one of the best weapons in the game next to the wave gun, but these people are idiots and I completely disagree. It's good for certain situations, but there's a better weapon out there. And yeah, I'll tell you what it is as soon as we come up to it. Anyway, this fires a fireball in a straight line and gets larger and faster at higher levels. The heat-seeking missiles are okay, but I wouldn't waste my time with them. They're expensive to use at higher levels, and they're better options for dealing with damage. At level 3, they cost 120 chips to use, but they move very fast. The laser beam is the only weapon that can only be used in flying mode. It's powerful and can be useful if you level it up. At later levels, it's useless unless you've upgraded to level 3. The lightsaber upgrade makes a laser sword appear in front of you. It does some decent damage, but requires you to be very close to your target. Unless you're a shoot-'em-up god, you probably don't want to be using this weapon. Dual laser weapon thing is like the lightsabers, but has 2 lasers coming out of your sides. This is a strange weapon, but I assume it has some use. I just don't know what that is. Finally, we come to the 2 most powerful weapons in the game. First, the enemy eraser is simply that. It erases smaller enemies and projectiles from the screen. It's labeled as EE on the screen, and each upgrade lands you 20 more uses. They're extremely useful but rare, so do not waste them. The good thing is, though, they don't use chips. A good strategy to employ is to hold on to your erasers until the later levels, where it's almost impossible to fly through without dying. Finally, the most awesome weapon in the game is the circle cannon. Wait, what? But every FAQ on the planet says this weapon sucks. Every Let's Play says this weapon sucks. All it does is go in a circle. It's hard to aim. It doesn't accomplish anything. Ah, but how wrong you are, my fine, impatient friend. While it's true that this weapon does not work very well at lower levels, at level 3, this weapon is a goddamn beast. It fires 2 huge balls of energy that circle around and move in the direction you fired. On top of that, at level 3, it actually moves pretty slow, so you can get in a lot of damage on anything in your path. That means it's also very useful in the later levels where bosses tend to do nothing but spam eyeballs. Yeah, I said eyeballs. We'll get to that. Anyway, the circle cannon. Get it, upgrade it, learn it, use it, love it. Believe me, you'll appreciate just how much easier this game is once you learn how to time your attacks with this beautiful son of a bitch. Alright, so we have a ton of levels and a ton of bosses to get through, so let's get started. The first boss is Naju's Planet Defense System. Get used to the eyeball-shaped enemies now, because you'll face a lot more of them later on. This boss is really easy. Just avoid the shots he fires, or destroy them if they're being a problem. Then, when you've got time, concentrate your fire on one of the eyes. Destroy all of the turrets, and you're on your way to Naju. The boss of Corridor 1 is called Fleepa, a large one-eyed blue fish. Fish isn't that hard to beat, honestly. It'll fire projectiles at you, which you can just avoid, or if there are too many on screen, use a secondary weapon to destroy them. Concentrate your primary fire on the boss, and he should go down without too much effort. The Corridor 11 boss is Optimon, and this guy can be trouble if you're not used to how he fires. This one-eyed piece of seaweed will grow projectiles out of it, then leave them on screen. The projectiles will travel with Optimon until they're at full length. I know, I'm really trying hard not to make a penis joke, okay? The only thing that makes this fight tricky is how the projectiles are fired. Once you get used to the weird delay that's introduced from the projectiles growing out of the boss, taking him down shouldn't be too much of a problem. Corridor 12's boss is a red Fleepa. Basically, he's a much stronger and faster version of the Corridor 1 boss. It shoots more projectiles than its cousin, but if you stick with the same pattern, you should be able to take him down. In Corridor 2, you'll face off against Crawdaddy. While he's tame as far as the rest of the bosses are concerned, he's definitely much harder than the previous fights. This guy fights with 2 claws, fires a continuous barrage of claws at you, and he's damn fast. There are 2 things you want to do here. Avoid getting hit by his body as he moves, since that does the most damage, and stay at the bottom of the screen. You won't have much of a chance if you try to get in his face, since his claws, body, and projectiles can take you down pretty quickly. If you have enough chips, you may want to use your wave beam or fireball if you have it. Otherwise, stick with your main gun and eventually, this big fish will go down. In Corridor 13, you'll face off against the Blue Bombarder. He's really easy. No, I'm not kidding. All he does is teleport around the screen and fire a lot of missiles at you. Oh yeah, there may be a lot of missiles on the screen, but they do next to no damage, and can be taken out by your regular attack. Really, just enjoy this boss for what he is, because you don't get a lot of easy bosses in this game. The Corridor 3 boss is a blue Optimon that not only attacks you with his penis, which is longer and faster now, but also with bullets. This fight is actually a lot tougher than the first time you faced him. Because of the speed and the added bullets, the pattern for beating this guy gets all sorts of screwed up, so good luck relearning it. The one thing you must absolutely not do is get hit by his growing projectile attack. Getting hit by that is a death sentence. The easiest way to take him down is to use the fireball attack and avoid those damn pieces of string. Corridor 14's boss is called the Clawbot, but it looks like a gigantic dildo. What this boss does is open its gigantic claw and fires out a large laser beam. As you might be able to guess, you're supposed to avoid that laser at all costs because it's a motherfucker. This boss has 2 parts to it. Destroy the giant claw, then destroy the main body. Once you destroy the dildo part of the boss, it'll start spamming its lasers endlessly. If you're careful, and you'll have to be careful, you should be able to weave through the laser blast just in time to avoid taking damage. Keep firing at the boss and eventually you'll take it down. Corridor 4's boss is Terramute, a giant dragon. You might think, oh god, what do I do? But just relax, because this guy's a pushover. Really, what were you panicking about? While he moves fast and fires out a spray of fireballs everywhere, your regular attacks should be more than enough to deal with this guy. And avoiding his attacks isn't that hard. He may catch you off guard a few times, but eventually you should be able to pound this guy into oblivion. Corridor 15 will present you with a giant green version of the Clawbot. Just like the giant infected penis it looks like, this guy is a pain to deal with. He's slower than the previous versions, but his attacks are stronger. Just sit back and avoid taking damage to get by him. Corridor 5 houses a space squid called Zibzub. No, I'm not making this up. This is a gigantic space squid called Zibzub. His attacks are as stupid as his name. Seriously, Zibzub? I mean, you might as well call the next boss Zap Rousdower. Anyway, he jumps around the screen and shoots at you. He's hard to avoid, but once you get the pattern down, you should be able to take him out with your regular attacks. And if a giant space squid called Zibzub doesn't scare you, it shouldn't. The next Corridor 16 will have you fight against the red Optimon. He's not as fast this time around, but he's much stronger, and his growing attack is much longer. It's growing longer. Changing the pattern of this boss yet again. Oh, as a side note, you can use fireballs to burn away the strings of poop, I guess. I don't know. Making this boss much easier. In Corridor 6, you'll face off against a glider, a winged robot that reminds me more of a pterodactyl from Yours World than some Uber enemy I need to pay attention to. This guy swoops up and down 3 times, then shoots a few missiles. Your best option is to avoid him during his swooping attack, then get a few shots in while he's hurling missiles at you. Oh yeah, the next area you're gonna travel to looks a fuck of a lot like Contra, doesn't it? You don't think the aliens from Contra came from Naju, do you? Nah. This is where the game takes a turn for the completely and utterly fucked up. Giant fish, dragons, and space squid I'm okay with, but now we've got to fight against flying mushrooms, skeletons, and eyeballs. An endless supply of eyeballs. Dear God, there are so many eyeballs. In corridors 7 and 17, you'll face off against a giant patch of eyeballs. One corridor is easier than the others, but essentially they're both the same. What happens is you'll be up against eyeballs that fire red and blue eyeballs at you. I know, it's confusing. The red eyeballs are blind from a lack of, I don't know, Visine and are easy to avoid, but fuck those blue eyeballs. The blue motherfuckers will follow you around the entire screen. No matter where you go, these fuckers follow you. You have two options. Kill them before they get behind or next to you, or use enemy erasers. The only way I've been able to get through the tougher of these two battles is to abuse the fuck out of my enemy erasers and use a combination of my circle cannon and grenades to take out the eyeballs quickly. It's not that easy, but if you keep it up eventually, you should be able to take these guys out. But Jesus, I fucking hate blue eyeballs. Corridor 8 and 18's boss is Grim Grin. You thought Zip Zub was bad. Let's talk about this motherfucker for a few minutes. Grim Grin will move around the screen in an odd pattern, and will lob a whole bunch of, you guessed it, eyeballs and bullets at you. No, I'm not kidding. This son of a bitch will lob a shitload of eyeballs at you, both blue and red. Yes, we're blue eyeballs. Hooray. Remember when I said the circle cannon would come in handy? Well, this is one of those fights where it's worth its weight in gold. The trick here is to catch Grim Grin in the center bottom of the screen with the level 3 version of this attack. It'll take care of everything he throws at you, and all you have to do is keep up with it to avoid taking too much damage. The worst part is that despite all the shit he throws at you on screen, he isn't even the hardest boss in the game. Oh no. We're not at the end yet. In Corridor 19, you'll face off against the Red Bombarder. The only difference with this fight is that his missiles move faster, but at this point it shouldn't be that much of a problem. Your shields and health should be high enough that you can absorb a lot of damage while dishing out the pain on this guy. In Corridor 9, however, you'll face off against... Ready? Igor. You understand why this game is called Eyeballs the Game yet? No? Igor doesn't do a whole lot aside from move forward and throw a bunch of skulls and blast you to hell with a shit ton of lasers. The best strategy I've found for dealing with this guy is to use your level 3 circle cannon and get just in range of his lasers. You may take some damage here, and then fire your cannon. You should get a good amount of hits in on Igor with each shot, plus the circle cannon should be able to take care of the skulls he throws at you. Eventually he'll go down, and you'll move on to the final part of the game. Corridor 20 pits you against the Red Clawbot. He's faster than the blue version and will fire more projectiles. The easiest way to deal with him is to use your level 3 Fireball or level 3 Circle Cannon. Either way, he should go down without too much of a problem. Corridor 10 puts you face to face with a new form of Igor that uses a hard to dodge and destroy nail attack. The same strategy applies here, however you may find that you'll have to use your enemy erasers to stay alive from the nail attacks, which is a real pain in the ass to avoid or kill. Keep it up, and eventually you get to fight another corridor. Corridor 21, the locked corridor you couldn't enter on the overworld previously, is a real pain in the ass. Essentially, it's just a boss rush mode. You'll face off against a blue Fleepa, a Zip Zub, blue Clawbot, red Optimon, blue Grim Grin, and a red Bombarder. Since you've already beaten all of these guys, you shouldn't have too much of a problem getting by them, and keeping your chip stocked high isn't that difficult either. Of course, once you're done with the boss rush, the game throws at you the single most difficult son of a bitch I've ever had the displeasure of facing. You know, sometimes games give you final bosses that are pushovers. Sometimes you get more difficult battles as a side quest in a game. Other times you'll get end bosses that are difficult, but only because the game's a piece of crap, so you also Roger Rabbit. But every once in a while, you'll get an end boss in a game that is just a son of a bitch. Guys like Zeromus. Well, the Guardian Legend has such a boss. He's called the Final Guardian, and good fucking luck. He has 3 forms, blue, red, and orange, and he has a literal shit ton of HP. He fires bullets, missiles, eyeballs, and everything else under the fucking sun in each one of his forms. This guy is insane. You are going to die. A lot. His first form is probably his toughest. Since you're probably low on enemy erasers, you'll want to save those for the final form. Instead, keep using the familiar strategy of using the circle cannon at the bottom of the screen, trying to catch the boss on his way down so it'll inflict a lot of damage and keep the projectiles away. I'm not gonna lie, His first form takes a shitload of damage. You can use a similar strategy with the second form, which should eventually get you to his final form. Now in his final form, this guy is just batshit insane. You'll never survive if you don't have any enemy erasers. The idea in his final form is simple. Get in his face and spam the fuck out of your enemy erasers. Keep it up, and eventually... Fuck, that ending sucked.